When you think about history's most successful leaders, who comes to mind? Well, for over 3,000 years, one role pretty much dominated the game: the Pharaoh of ancient Egypt. These weren't just kings, they were the living heart of an entire civilization. So let's dive in and figure out how on earth they pulled it off for so long.
Right, this is the big question, isn't it? How does a single institution, the pharaoh, not just stick around, but actually thrive for 3 millennia? I mean, that's just an insane amount of time. Well, the answer is this incredible mix of religion, a really smart government, and just sheer mind-blowing ambition.
To even begin to understand their staying power, you have to look at the pharaoh's job description. And trust me, it was way more complicated than just ruling a kingdom. This was something else entirely.
Okay, it all boils down to this one central concept: Ma'at. You have to understand this idea was everything to the Egyptians. It wasn't just about laws and keeping people in line. It was about maintaining the cosmic balance of the entire universe. So if the Nile flooded properly, if the crops grew, if Egypt was safe, it was all because the pharaoh was doing their job and upholding Ma'at. Their number one duty was, and this is not an exaggeration, to literally keep the universe from falling into chaos.
So how could one person possibly handle all of that? Well, they fused all these roles into one. The pharaoh wasn't just the head of state, they were also the high priest of every single temple, the commander-in-chief of the armies, and this is the key, the one and only link between the gods and humanity. Think about it. Each role made the other stronger. Your top general was also a living god, so his orders were divine. Your high priest was also your king, so religious belief was state policy. It was the perfect system for absolute power.
But look, having a divine job description is one thing. You can't actually run a country on belief alone. The pharaoh was at the very top of an incredibly efficient, well-oiled state machine. And this right here, this was the engine room of the whole empire. The pharaoh's will was carried out by this huge, complex bureaucracy. You had the vizier, kind of like a prime minister, running the day-to-day. Then you had officials managing everything from taxes to food storage, governors ruling the different regions, and a whole army of scribes writing everything down. This system was like the nervous system of Egypt. It let one person's authority reach every single corner of the kingdom, fast.
And this is what you get. Just let that number sink in. 3,000 years. This whole setup, divinely blessed and super organized, created a level of stability that is just almost unheard of in human history.
So you're probably thinking, okay, where's the proof? How do we see this power in action? Well, you literally can't miss it. The pyramids, they aren't just tombs. They are the ultimate mountain-sized billboard advertising just how incredibly capable the pharaonic system really was. You know, what's truly wild is how fast this all happened. We're talking about a little over a century, and Egypt goes from Djoser's Step Pyramid, the world's first massive stone building, by the way, to Snefru, who fearlessly experiments with the design, to his son Khufu, who builds the Great Pyramid at Giza. This wasn't some slow, gradual process. This was a full-on technological sprint that basically defined an entire era. And that's the real takeaway here. You simply can't build something like the Great Pyramid without a government that can organize and feed a massive workforce, quarry and haul millions of tons of rock, and then follow an insanely precise architectural plan. It's basically a spreadsheet, but written in stone. So why go to all this trouble? Well, the reasons were just as layered as the pyramids themselves. Of course, it was about securing the pharaoh's journey into the afterlife, but it was also a very public show of force and stability, a way to prove to everyone that under this pharaoh, Ma'at was strong. And hey, it also worked as a massive public works project, uniting the entire country under one epic goal. But here's the thing. The role of pharaoh wasn't static. It wasn't set in stone, unlike their buildings. Over 3,000 years, the job had to adapt, and different rulers definitely brought their own unique style to the throne. And I mean, just look at how different two pharaohs could be. On one side, you've got Thutmose III, basically the Napoleon of Egypt, leading these huge military campaigns and expanding the empire to its absolute peak. Then, on the complete other end of the spectrum, you have Akhenaten, the religious radical who tried to throw out thousands of years of tradition to worship just one god. One pharaoh expanded Egypt's borders, the other tried to completely rewire its soul. And the list just goes on and on. The institution itself was flexible enough to have powerful female rulers like Hatshepsut, who was more into trade and economics, and then legendary showmen like Ramses the Great,
who basically covered Egypt in statues of himself. The title stayed the same, but the person wearing the crown was always redefining what it meant to be pharaoh.
All right, so let's pull this all together. Let's finally answer that big question we started with. How did they do it? How did this one institution last for 3,000 years?
It really came down to these four pillars, all working together perfectly. First, religion gave the pharaoh absolute divine authority, no questions asked. Second, that super efficient government turned their authority into actual action. Third, the predictable, fertile Nile Valley provided all the food and wealth to pay for everything. And finally, the sheer weight of tradition made the whole system incredibly hard to change. Each pillar just locked the others into place.
And this is exactly why we're still talking about them. Their power wasn't just some abstract political theory. They made it real. They made it tangible. They literally wrote their legacy into the landscape of Egypt, building things so massive and so permanent that they still define that civilization thousands of years later. Which kind of leaves us with one last big thought. The pharaohs were obsessed with eternity, with building things that could defeat time itself. So what does that ancient, all-consuming ambition really tell us about power, about belief, and maybe about our own very human desire to leave something behind?